Hey guys, what is up and welcome to a new Tesla update video. So today, as per usual, let's go over Tesla stock, let's go over the market, let's go over what is happening to Tesla, what we can expect moving forward, and yeah, all that good stuff. So ladies and gentlemen, as per usual, if you enjoy, please don't forget to hit that like button. This is not financial advice. I am not a financial advisor. And of course, if you do enjoy my technical analysis, thoughts on the charts, I do share my updates and thoughts on the charts, mainly on Tesla stock, obviously in my YouTube membership section. For just $3 a month, you get access to that. Of course, I constantly share it throughout the day as the market is trading. Obviously, when something is worth sharing naturally, sometimes more, sometimes less, depends on the day. Sometimes other stocks as well, like lately Google I've been talking about a bit as well. And any other opportunities, obviously. And yeah, so that's down below if you're interested to join. Just $3 a month, or for $5 a month, you get access to everything in that first tier, plus NVIDIA daily updates in the second tier for the $5 a month. But nonetheless, jumping into a Tesla closing the day up, we'll say about 2.5%, closing at $336.51, which is a little bit bittersweet, we'll say, mainly because towards the last like 20-ish minutes of the day, a lot of those gains did get thrown down the window. As you can see, a massive selling came into the end of the day. And this was actually roughly around the news when it broke that apparently like Elon, let me see if I can find it quickly. There was news about Elon and how he's going to be like, oh, spending more time with Doge or something like that. Let me see if I can find, yeah, I think it was this one here. I'm assuming it was off this kind of news that broke. Elon Musk has told people he plans to spend the next 4 months working on Doge. He's aiming to cut 2 trillion, whatever. Anyway, the main thing is this one, next 4 months working on Doge. I'm not really sure how that's a surprise. I'm not really sure why the sell-off, how much of that was because of that. I thought that was pretty obvious, personally. I mean, I thought it was pretty obvious, but I guess not. I don't know. But yeah, so what is there to really mention here, right? So first and foremost, let's just get the obvious stuff out of the way. Let's start with the weekly, right? The weekly time frame. This is where I want to start things off, right? It's always good to look at the weekly just to kind of get an idea as to what is really happening on the overall zoomed out look of the chart, right? Well, the overall zoomed out look of the chart has good news and bad news, right? It definitely has good news and bad news. The most obvious bad news is the fact that the MACD is, of course, pretty high up and, of course, flipped down to the bearish side, and which again, I still think that we're not going to well above 500 anytime soon. We'll get bounces, and I think we can definitely come back to like at least 370s, but I don't think we'll go really like well beyond all-time highs for a while. Like I think that'll take a bit. Like I don't see it yet. I still don't see it because of the MACD, right? And of course the stochastic also kind of flipped bearish a long time ago, but it's still obviously curling down even more so off this weekly sell-off. So that's that. So moving forward from that though, however, the good news on the weekly is the fact that, we did finally retrace back down into, where is this drawing? Right into the market bias, right? This market bias right here, you can see this line, right? Again, weeklies are really important to, retrace back into them. And remember how when we were up here and everyone was screaming for 500, 600, and I kept talking about how I don't think that's going to happen. You can go back, you can literally go back to these videos back in like December even, I think I was saying it too. I just don't see that happening because, when a stock is this far away from the mean reversion, yeah, it can go higher. Obviously, there's exceptions. Obviously, things can, always do things that are abnormal. Like, Hood, for instance, is a good example of that. But you have to take smaller caps. I mean, it's actually 50 billion now, mainly because it's been rocketing so aggressively. But you have to take these kind of slightly smaller caps with more of a grain of salt. But usually when you have like a major, like a big cap, like a mega cap stock, or even a large cap stock, or especially a Max 7 type stock, which essentially I guess is a mega cap, it's not very often that they go away from the weekly mean too far and stay that way for too long without at least some reversion at some point. I mean, even NVIDIA, technically, you can see every time it did go too far, it kept coming back down into it, right? Over and over, despite, it's absolutely astronomical bullish run, but nonetheless, even then, it also did the same thing, right? So anyways, the point is that we're back though. We're back. We're there, and it's hard for me to be too bearish here, honestly, and for several reasons. Number one, of course, we are technically retesting this trend line from all the way back here. You can see starting from this line over here, it has resisted us a few times here, then we broke above it here, and now we're coming back down to retest that again. Combine that with the fact that we are pretty much right on that market weekly bias or mean reversion line, we're holding it so far. Now, if this thing turns red, which it will take a while, like for this thing to really turn red, it will take a while. Usually the way this works and for this to really turn red is if you see this kind of green cloud over here, that's the EMA cloud. Usually it turns red when the EMA cloud also goes below it. You can kind of see it here actually on the weekly time frame, right? You can see how it was white is green essentially. White is like good, red is bad, right? So when it's kind of, you know, white and not red essentially, you can see, you know, it kind of started dancing around here, but you can see the green cloud, it slowly started to get tighter and tighter and tighter, and the top part of the cloud, which is the 9 EMA, started slowly getting closer and closer to the bottom part, which is the 21 EMA, and ultimately it crossed, and that's roughly, you can see where that market bias essentially started turning red. We're still a well ways from that. So like the point I'm trying to make is that even if Tesla were to have this market bias or weekly mean reversion line turn red and essentially become actually bearish, which at that point I do think will at the very least come down to 280s. We're still a ways from that, and I don't think it'll happen too quickly either. There's still a lot of support here. There's still a lot of buying pressure overall around this general area, and like I don't see us going much lower than at the very least this week's low. I think worst case is probably like closer to 315, maybe even 300, but like even the 300 to me is a bit of a stretch, at least short term, at least for the next, you know, honestly, even a couple of weeks, I would say, because of those factors, right? It wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. Like something would actually have to happen, like some news-driven thing, I guess, catalyst would have to happen for that to happen. So, anyways, the point I'm just trying to make is, to put it simple and short, I'm kind of rambling on because I'm explaining my thought process, I guess, is simply put, I don't see us going that much lower than the low we put in this week so far, again, and if it is lower, it's not that much lower, right? So that's kind of my weekly perspective. Yeah, you know, the RSI is oversold. Yeah, we're at the market bias and whatnot, and I do expect some bounce back up to 370s from here, which I'll explain more in the daily chart / 4-hour chart. But that's kind of my overall perspective. I like the fact that we're retesting it, and you know, again, the weekly chart is still looking pretty bullish because it did overall, at the end of the day, it did make a higher high. That is a very bullish structure, and this retracement, however deep it ends up overall being, whether this is just all she wrote and we go up from here, or we get a small bounce and then go even lower, whatever the case may be, I still view it as overall bullish retracement. Mainly because we set up a fresh higher high and we have yet to set a fresh lower low on overall, the overall more zoomed out approach or perspective, I should say, on the weekly. Anyways, that was a lot. That took longer than I thought it would. Now, going back to the daily chart, what is the daily chart suggesting? Well, the daily chart is where, you know, again, weekly is to see structure. Daily chart is where I, you know, or 4-hour chart, sometimes 1 hour is where I look for the short-term trades, I guess, or the short-term trades, whether it's literally just trading or selling options or whatever. So what is the daily suggesting here, right? Let me go ahead and actually bring this out a little bit. You can see, actually, if we end up overall coming back down to this, you can see this trend line will also support us at 280. Anyways, I still think that'll take a while. That's not going to happen overnight. That'll probably take like potentially well into March. Anyway, sorry. So the daily, what is it saying, right? Well, we have an inside day candle. Pretty simply put, I was hoping it'll be a bullish Harami candle. Unfortunately, I don't think this constitutes as a bullish Harami candle. A bullish Harami is essentially when you get like a massive downtrend. You can see like constant red candles, and then you get essentially an inside day candle. Like, I'm not sure if this is considered a bullish Harami. You know, maybe if people know better, that they can kind of correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know. Not really fully convinced about the bullish Harami, but it is an inside day candle, right? That's for sure, because the whole candles in today's price range was contained within yesterday's large red candle. So essentially, another way of looking at it, really simply put, is the fact that if we break today's low, that's going to be bearish. If we break today's high, that's bullish, right? And, you know, as early as tomorrow, right? Tomorrow's PPI could happen tomorrow. So essentially a break above 347 roughly, and a break of about, you know, we'll say 329 roughly. Today's low, today's high. So watch for those two levels to get broken one way or the other. Now, if it gets broken to the upside, again, the main level is about, you know, today's high, about 347 to honestly 350. That $3 range, I wanted to get broken on the 1 hour chart. And that's where, you know, you can see we did come up to the mean reversion. This is what I was telling our members this morning, actually, how I expected to mean revert right back into it. The rejection was a lot fiercer than I expected, but nonetheless, you know, I do want it to get back above this, turn this mean reversion line back into green, and then essentially break above 350, which is that resistance point right here. You can see, right? Once we break that, I do think we will do a mean reversion on the larger time frame, like the 4 hour, which ultimately will bring us back up to somewhere around this kind of, you know, 370s-ish region, depending on how long it takes. It could also be coming closer to the daily reversion, which will be somewhere closer to 380 itself. So about 370 to 380 is my target if we break above, in my opinion, 347 to 350. Now the flip side, the downside is if we break below, honestly, 330 roughly, right? And especially if you break below yesterday's low, that will be bearish, which so essentially below 330/325-ish, that $5-ish range. If we break below that range, however, then, you know, things will get a bit more bearish. I think we'll most likely make our way back down, at the very least to at the very least to this gap fill at around 320-ish, right? That's kind of my main target to the downside, with the worst case scenario closer to $300 per share, which is roughly where that 200 EMA sits right here. You can see pretty much exactly on $300 per share. That's like the worst case scenario, right? If we break that low, which we could, I don't know, like I'm not sure. I don't think we will, but we could. So yeah, watch for those levels, right? Tomorrow, as early as tomorrow to break, and that should signal the next direction of the move. So yeah. But, you know, again, I don't favor too much more downside from here. Like, even if we get a sell-off to 300, like, I would expect the bounce to be pretty aggressively and very quick from that general vicinity. Maybe we only go to like 315 for this kind of fair value gap over here. You can see, right, this kind of little type area right here. Like this, you know, also is a potential candidate, right? So the point I'm trying to make is I do think downside from here is limited, right? Worst case, I think is 300, but I do think it's limited. Why do I think it's limited? Because RSI is still severely oversold. Stochastic is actually getting a bit of a curling action, but it is in very oversold territory. Like if I zoom out, every time the stochastic has come down into these vicinities, every single time it has eventually curled up. Naturally, these things take time. It's not going to happen in one day, right? You know, it's a daily chart, right? It takes some time. It could take, you know, a few days easily. But nonetheless, each time it's come down to these levels, it's curled. It's curled up and it's went even higher ultimately, right? And, you know, that's, I don't see why it would be any different this time. I know it feels like it could be different and it feels like the world is falling apart. But again, that's something else to watch out for. The daily RSI is still extremely oversold. MACD is pretty damn beaten up for sure. And we're pretty much right at the bottom end of the Bollinger Band. We're also pretty much right at the bottom end of my band's regression line. You know, all these factors tells me that the downside, though there could still be more downside, is limited. And in my opinion, we're much closer to a bottom than we are to a top, at least for the next, you know, couple of weeks, I would say. So the other option is this, right? If we do break to the downside, those levels like I mentioned, and we do make a lower low, let's say somewhere to like maybe 315 or something like that, worst case 300, but probably in my opinion closer to 315, that will most likely make a bullish divergence on the 4-hour RSI. We will most likely go ahead and, you know, do this and make a lower low, while the stochastic or the RSI will most likely make a higher low, and that to me will create a beautiful looking bullish divergence. And I mean, that's, well, it's a bullish divergence, right? The name speaks for itself. That'll obviously be a very good sign. And I think this would be just an even better opportunity, right? So again, I don't know if that's going to happen, right? I'm not trying to say I know. Nobody knows. Like maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't. Maybe this is all she wrote and we do get a beautiful retracement from here. Nobody knows, right? I'm not going to say like I know. I don't know. I don't know for sure. That's why I am in a position here, but I am willing to essentially double it if we come down to these levels, you know, like I mentioned, in the very low 300s. Like I do have cash secured puts there, and I'm willing to double my position if we get there. But again, I don't know if we will. So that's why, you know, I'm already in one. I'm pretty much flat on it now, actually, after that sell-off. So I'm pretty much flat on that position. But nonetheless, again, we'll see how it plays out moving forward for the next few days. PPI tomorrow, we'll see how the market and how Tesla reacts to it as well. In terms of options flow, overall bullish flow for throughout the day, I should say. And towards the end of the day, we did actually see some. Let me refresh this. We did actually see some nice bullish flow towards the end of the day. Some calls coming in for actually this Friday with some mixed puts as well. But the main thing I noticed is a lot of calls did come in for next Friday. You can see 0221, especially like down here, right? A lot of these calls came in for next Friday for, and down here a little bit too. So I did see a decent amount of calls roll in when this dip started happening in the last half hour of the day towards next Friday's expiration, that were 340 and 345 strikes. So let's see if that actually plays out, and let's see if they're right, I guess you can say. So yeah, that's my kind of overall analysis right now. Let's see how it actually ultimately plays out moving forward. And yeah, I mean, it's scary. I'm not gonna lie. The price action is kind of spooky. It feels like the world is ending. It feels like Tesla will never recover ever. But the same way it felt like Tesla up here will never fall again, and it's probably just only gonna go up, because why would it ever fall again? It's pretty much the same vibe as it was up here for a lot of people, I'm sure. My goodness, what's going on? As it was up here, as it is down here, honestly, and maybe even slightly lower, right? It's probably the exact same vibe. People are probably thinking, like, why would it ever go back up again? Like, it feels like it's over. Like nothing, like why? There's no reason for it to ever go up again. This stock is going to zero. Same thing up here. Everyone probably thought there's no reason for it to ever go down. The stock has to just go up to like 600 next. Like, why would it go down? There's just so much bullish news. Everything feels phenomenal. It's just the exact same scenario, right? And that's just kind of what happens when stocks run and have these overbought conditions. Everyone's very bulled up, and then of course when they have these very scary kind of aggressive drops like Tesla usually does, and the RSI is this oversold, everyone's scared. And I'm not gonna lie, at times it gets me too, right? Sometimes I look at it and I'm like, man, like, am I doing the right thing here? It's spooky, right? The market is designed to make you think twice, and sometimes more than that. It's just that's what it's good at, and that's what it does. And the best way to avoid that is to scale in properly, right? Scale in properly and don't scale in too aggressively, and let the market do its thing. But anyways, that's all I got. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow. Peace.